tracked down not just Barack Obama's ex-girlfriend, but somebody to whom he had proposed marriage not once, but twice. And the story she told you about why their relationship ended kind of reframes a narrative that Barack Obama himself was trying to pitch to us in his book, Dreams from My Father. So can you explain that story to us and how you found the ex-girlfriend?
When Barack first really came to successful attention as a presidential candidate in early 2008, I was intrigued, and so I was living in Britain at that time. I ordered a cheap paperback copy of Dreams from My Father and actually read most of it on a holiday in Portugal. And right from the get-go, it's pretty clear that it's not a work of history, that it's telling his life story, but it's transparent that most of the characters have pseudonyms or are composite figures. And so that very much intrigued me. And for the balance of 2008 into early 2009, up through when he was inaugurated, I sort of read everything I could long distance about his life up through when he went into the U.S. Senate in 2005. And then in March of 2009, I made the decision to start doing interviews focused on his years as a community organizer in Chicago, 1985 to 1988, because that's really the centerpiece of Dreams from My Father. I mean, I wanted to solve this large number of mysteries as to who were these people that he'd worked with. And so my focus very much was on the organizers who hired and trained him, the local people in the far South Side community with whom he worked. And so I did several years of legwork of tracking down people. For folks who are like living in a public housing development, they're not the easiest people in the world to find. If you've gone to Harvard Law School, as Barack did, it's pretty easy to find Harvard Law School classmates. But that work on the far South Side, finding these people who knew him as a young man, before he got into politics, was deeply rewarding. Some of these folks had spoken to a reporter or two, but many of them had not been found. Now, to your particular question, during most of that time that Barack was working down in Roseland and Altgeld Gardens, he was living in Hyde Park, the integrated community around the University of Chicago. And it was public record information that he had had a girlfriend with whom he lived for a big chunk of that time, someone who was a graduate student at the University of Chicago, though no journalist had ever named her. Now, as someone who's spent, all my adult life in universities, as anyone who has done that would know, you can find a student directory in the university library for any given year. And so knowing Barack's address, the address at which he lived in those years, I had Alex Lerner, my young University of Chicago research assistant, go to Regenstein Library, pull the student directories for, 1986, 1987, 1988, and let's see who else lives at that particular address. So that's how I found Sheila Yeager, the woman with whom he lived. We also found this nice couple that lived directly above them, who were both professors at North Carolina State University. I went and talked with them too, and they had, nice memories of knowing Barack and Sheila from the laundry room in the apartment building.
It's so fascinating because, of course, we're used to people doing these exhaustive bios and deep dives on our presidents. And yet you were the first to find Sheila Yeager, and her response upon you, a Pulitzer Prize winning author, contacting her was something to the effect of, "I'm so glad it's you who found me." And she really did have a story to tell. I think you tell me what you think, but I think the reason the story about why they broke up, the real reason, according to her, because they diverge on the stories about why they broke up, is resonating because people already, especially in the Jewish community, had a suspicion that Barack Obama may have a strong anti-Semitism in him. Anybody who sat in Jeremiah Wright's church for as long as he did would be suspected of this because he would rant about his anti-Semitic views. And that's sort of where her story takes off. So what was the story she told you about how they broke up, and how does it differ from what Barack Obama said in his 1995 memoir, Dreams from My Father, about why he broke up with the pseudonymed version of Sheila?
Well, Megyn, two things. First, I have a very positive opinion of Jeremiah Wright. He said any number of unpleasant, wacky things. But perhaps the person who was the greatest formative influence on my life was the late James H. Cone, the founder of Black liberation theology. People view Jim as a radical. Jim was a lovely person. And I'd say the same thing about Jerry Wright. People view Jerry as a dangerous radical. But to me, as someone who has spent much of my life immersed with Martin Luther King Jr., Jerry during his time in active ministry was very much a combination of Dr. King and Jim Cone. Now, that's not to defend everything Jerry said, because particularly that one time at the National Press Club with Barbara Reynolds, he said some offensive things. But it's certainly a part of my King training that we do not judge people by the one or two worst things that happened in the course of their lives. Sheila Yeager is half Dutch, half Japanese. And it's important to highlight in the context of what David Samuels in the Tablet interview really very much predominantly focused on, that Sheila's paternal grandparents in the Netherlands during World War II actively worked to protect Jewish people, and they are enshrined, if that's the right word, at the memorial to heroes of the Holocaust in Israel. So that family history for Sheila is very important.
This is from the Tablet magazine interview, writing that what you documented after tracking down Sheila was an explosive fight over a very different subject from the one that Barack Obama said ended their relationship. In Sheila Yeager's telling, the quarrel that ended their relationship was not about his self-identification as a Black man, Sheila's white, and the impetus was not about a play regarding the American Black experience, but an exhibit at Chicago's Sparris Institute about the 1961 trial of Adolf Eichmann. At the time that Obama and Sheila visited the Institute, Chicago politics was being roiled by a Black mayoral aide named Steve Coakley, who in a series of letters organized by Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam accused Jewish doctors in Chicago of infecting Black babies with AIDS as part of a genocidal plot against African Americans. In Yeager's recollection, what set off the quarrel that precipitated the end of the couple's relationship was Obama's stubborn refusal to condemn Black racism. He would not condemn these comments, and she was upset that he would not condemn Coakley. In the end, they broke up. So this seems to be her saying, maybe not that he's anti-Semitic, but that he's certainly not going to condemn these particular comments about that seem anti-Semitic because they came from a Black man. Look, you did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people and pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. The program's complicated, but no one knows more about it than the CPAs and tax pros at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, even those who took PPP loans and even if you had increases in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Now let covidtaxrelief.org help get you up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. That's covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.